So good afternoon. My name is Dave Luer. I'm with Elite Body Shop Solutions, and today I'm going to show you how to create and manage CCC One repair plans. So the first thing I wanted to show everybody is, first of all, the production schedule dashboard is where the repair plans are typically managed. I'll show you that you can also manage them from within the repair order, but this is typically the screen that you would want to manage and update your repair plans. So how you access this, in case you're not familiar, is you go up to the little hamburger looking thing in the left upper corner, you drop it down, and you go to production schedule, and that's where you will find that. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is a lot of times shops tell me that they don't have sufficient training on how to do some of the most basic things in CCC, and while all of the information is not available here, there's a ton of information that I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of up in the help menu. If you go to training, see all training, and everything from creating a repair plan, if you need some tips on Update Plus, things of that nature. There's quite a bit of information in here. Not everything, but a pretty fair amount, okay? So one thing that we're not going to be covering today is Update Plus, which of course is the feature that can communicate with your customers throughout the repair process. I do have a separate webinar that if anybody's interested in looking at, I can send it to you, and that'll explain how you use these repair plans, how that will automatically update your customer, and I've got a few tips and tricks on how to do that if anybody's interested. So my rule about creating a repair plan, and this is especially important for somebody that is a CSR or somebody in the position to create the initial repair plan. My rule is that every time a customer schedules a repair and the opportunity has been converted to a repair order, you need to create a repair plan, right? The only exception to this rule would be, you see here where it says new plan, the only exception why you would want to ever see new plan is that maybe you've got a tricky back-ordered part and you don't know exactly when it's going to show up, so therefore it makes it really difficult to schedule the customer. So I typically don't like to see at my shops a lot of new plans unless they've got a good explanation for it. So these little things here, I don't know what the technical term is for them, but I call them nubbies. So each one of these nubbies represents a date in your system. So as you can see, the first little nubby is the vehicle in. The next one is repair started. Repair complete, right there. I know it's there somewhere. And this is, of course, vehicle out. So this is what a basic repair plan would look like, and it should resemble this in most shops. Now, oftentimes when CCC gets you set up, sometimes they won't have these little numbers in front of each repair phase description. Now, the reason I like to have a number in front of these is that a lot of shops like to sort this dashboard by phase so that they can see how vehicles are traveling through the shop in an order that makes sense. So by having a number, it'll help you keep these in the proper order when you do sort your dash by current phase. So another way that you can view this repair plan is you can double click anywhere on this line and it'll actually open it up so that you can kind of see the individual components, right? So this is a very basic repair plan. You've got pre-production, repair, which could represent body, frame, and mechanical. Of course, your refinish phase, assembly, detail. And then I also like my shops to add, especially ones that are using Update Plus, to add a final phase called Final QC. And there's a good reason for that I explained in the Update Plus webinar, but you want to make sure you've got a Final QC phase that only the file handler is allowed to mark complete. Okay, so I want to see, first of all, if we've got any questions so far, guys.
That final QC with the file handler, you're talking about the estimator that does the final inspection, or are you talking about the receptionist that does the final call?
I would actually say that either is okay, depending on, as long as you have some clarity on whose role that is. Typically, I want to see this marked complete after the customer is called, or at the same time. And there's a reason for that, primarily for Update Plus users, because we don't want to send, in other words, we don't want to send an automated message to a customer through Update Plus if the car is not actually inspected and done. So either the file handler or the person that's responsible for calling the customer can probably mark this complete. I would say the file handler in most cases, okay?
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, then what we're going to do next is I'm going to kind of show you some of the guts. A lot of people don't get to see this, but I want to show you what makes up this repair plan and causes it to act the way that it does. And those in the shop that have the administrative rights to access this information, this is where you would go to make changes. You go to your configure menu, you would choose your profile, you would choose the repair facility profile, and you would scroll down to repair plans. So typically most shops have a repair plan that they use called standard, and I assume that's probably the case for you guys. So as you can see, you've got the various repair phases that are listed in here, just like you saw in the repair plan. It's based on an 8-hour workday, so for shops that have a longer workday, that's where you would adjust that. So if you look at each repair plan phase, you can see that they have either fixed or calculated lengths of time. So in other words, on the repair phase, this is what it's calculating. It's calculating 70% of the body hours and 100% of the diagnostic, electrical, structural, frame, and mechanical. So it's taking all those hours and dividing it by a burn rate of 5 hours a day. Okay, so typically 5 hours a day is a pretty it's a pretty good shop. Somebody that can keep cars moving through there. So for some shops, 5 hours a day might be a little aggressive. So a fixed phase is going to, for what we're calling pre-production, we just put how many hours we want that phase to be, and it stays the same regardless of how many hours are on the job. So if we look at a refinish, we can see that in this particular case, we've got a burn rate of 6 hours a day at 100% of the refinish hours that makes up that phase. Now you might be wondering why there's only 70% in the repair phase, and I do see a little bit of difference from shop to shop, but typically you're allocating a percentage of your total body hours to the disassembly process, which might be part of your pre-production activities such as blueprinting. And also if we have an assembly phase, you may have a percentage that's allocated towards that. So for example, in this case, we've got 20% of the total body labor hours that's allocated to the reassembly of the vehicle. Details a fixed phase, and so is final QC. So this is where the numbers can be adjusted if your repair plans are too aggressive or not aggressive enough. this is where those changes can be made. Also, if you want to add a permanent phase, this is where you would do that as well. All right, so now guys, what we're going to do is we are going to go back to our production schedule dashboard, and we're going to create a new repair plan. So when you convert this opportunity into a repair order, you can convert it from here, or you can actually go into the RO itself and create it from the repair plan tab. Most shops are probably going to be in the file when they are converting it to a repair order and creating a repair plan. So for a CSR that is going to be creating this, they'll probably do it from here. So they would just choose repair plan, they would pick the appropriate repair plan, which in this case would be standard, and then we would choose the date that this vehicle is scheduled to come in. And then we would leave the repair started date at this time as the same date. We would hit OK, and there is your repair plan. So once the vehicle arrives, we would then want to click the complete box for vehicle in, indicating that the vehicle is now in, and you can see how the little nubby turned gray instead of red. Anytime you see red on a repair plan, that means that it's past its due date. So in other words, now it's midday on Tuesday, and you can see this was scheduled to be started first thing this morning, so that's why that little nubby's turned red. So you can go ahead and mark its repair started for now. Each shop has a little different meaning for what repairs started means, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. And the other thing that's important to point out is you'll notice that when you create a new repair plan, it doesn't automatically give you the promise date. And so when you're looking at your repair plans, in fact, let's save and close out of this and look at it from the dashboard, you'll see a little question mark. So that red question mark means that there's no out date. Okay. So again, in Update Plus training, I would teach you to leave that as a question mark until you have a realistic idea when the vehicle's actually going to go home. Because if you haven't blueprinted the car and you don't know the status of your parts, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure by creating a promise date. Okay. But for this case, we're going to say that we know what that date is, and we're going to go ahead and generate it. So you see what just happened there? I just moved that little nubby over, and it automatically created an out date that you can see right here. Okay, so another question I get a lot is I said, well, maybe I want to add a phase. Maybe this particular Ford Focus needs some sublet work done. So you can create your standard repair plan to always include sublet, but what I found that's easiest, at least for me, is that I just go in and add a phase if I need to add something. So what I can do is go in here, add a phase. I can choose my phase, which we will say is a sublet operation. I'm going to say that I think this thing is going in for an alignment, and it's probably going to be there all day. So I'm going to put 8 hours, hit OK, and then I'm going to choose where in the repair plan I want that sublet to go. Okay, so watch this carefully. Right now the sublet is on the very bottom of your repair plan over here, but you can move it wherever you want. So I'm going to move that up to where we're going to do the sublet right after the assembly in this particular case, and I'm going to hit OK. All right. So now you've got a sublet phase in there, but oh my goodness, what happened here? You've got a red exclamation point. And this is an indication, guys, that, and it says if you highlight on it, vehicle out is before repairs completed. So this little triangle is when you promised the car would go home, but now your system, because you added a sublet, is telling you that it's not going to be done by the promised date, because this is your new completion date. So what you can do is, my recommendation in this particular scenario is that the person handling the file, or the person responsible for the customer communication and for this repair order, would probably want to update their customer and then go ahead and fix this. There are several reasons in here. I usually just use other. I click OK, and it automatically adjusts the promise date relative to the completion date. All right, guys, how about some questions so far?
So this is pertaining more to the estimator who's moving as the car is in progress?
Yes. So after you would create the initial repair plan, either the estimator, or in some shops it would be like a production manager or the shop manager, whoever's in charge is accountable for keeping these repair plans up to date in real time. And when I say real time, I don't mean that somebody's going to be out there constantly moving these things around, but best practice is you've got to at least do this once or twice a day and make sure that we're keeping these things up to date. And I'll show you a little bit more about how to manage these next. Okay.
Last week I did those at our meeting, our morning meeting.
Okay.
I moved them and made them up to date at the meeting.
Fantastic. And that's not a bad way to go either. Assuming that somebody has a good idea what's going on with the actual repair, it makes sense that somebody would have a dialogue with the technicians or the production manager or whoever, and then move these things. I recommend actually moving these, and then you can print your projected delivery date reports and other things in CCC that you help use to manage the shop. So let's talk quickly about this pre-production phase. I want to make clear that everybody understands what that means. And what it does mean is any activity that could occur from the time the vehicle's dropped off till the time the vehicle is production ready, meaning that we've got all the critical parts on hand that we need to move the vehicle through the process. Okay? Now, some shops, production ready criteria might mean that they've got all the parts, period. And other shops, it may be I've got enough parts to get the vehicle completely through paint and back to assembly. So each shop may have their own definition. So if this Ford Focus came in and you knew darn well that by tomorrow morning you're not going to have all the parts, you would want to take this and drag it out to when you will have all the parts. So perhaps on Thursday, see what I just did there? I moved it out to Thursday because that's when I think this thing's going to be ready to go into body repair. Right? And then you may have to adjust your repair plan accordingly. Okay, so let's play with this one for a minute. Let's say, so this is some ways that you can mark these things complete. So let's say this one came in today, and by noon we had this thing already in body. We had pre-ordered the parts and everything's here. So I just marked that area complete, and then you'll notice over in the phase it changed it to repair, indicating that the vehicle is now in body repair. What I did here, guys, is I right-clicked on this portion, on this phase, and you can choose complete as scheduled. In some cases, it'll say complete now, right? So can complete it as scheduled, and then it'll move it from body into refinish, right? And you'll want to keep these little brackets in alignment with the date and time that actually occurred. And you can see now, because we did such a good job blueprinting this car, and we had all the right parts on hand quickly, that this thing's already in paint. And you can see here that we're way ahead of schedule already. So that's a good thing, right? So any questions on this so far? Does everybody know how to mark a phase complete?
Yep.
Because there's a second one. There's a second way I'm going to show you. Some people actually like to double click again. Anywhere on this line, you can also mark them complete from within this box. And then you can mark them incomplete if you made a mistake.
Okay.
Okay, so here's something else I want to show you. Oftentimes people will create a repair plan before the vehicle goes into the blueprint department. So what happens when you blueprint a vehicle? Usually add hours, right? You make the repair plan more accurate. And so instead of leaving the repair plan as it was with the inaccurate curb-written guesstimate, I recommend that after blueprint, you always recalculate these plans, right? You just go in, you choose the same thing, and it'll recalculate. It'll take the added hours that you put in during your supplement or blueprinting process, and it'll account for those, making your repair plan accurate.
All right. Why did it put the delivery date so far out then?
That was because earlier we were playing with it, and we had moved it. We had moved it out, so it didn't automatically adjust the out date, did it? It only adjusted automatically the completion date. So the reason it does that is because of this system's affiliation with Update Plus and Update Promise. And every time in those systems, if you have it set up in your CCC, every time this moves, your customer is going to get another update. And sometimes that's not desirable. So that's why it gives you the choice to move this by yourself after you've updated your customer.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So I want to explain one thing real quick, and this is kind of advanced thinking a little bit, but I think it's important to point this out. Some shops that are really trying to improve their cycle times, and they like to measure their cycle time reports, they want to know how long is it taking from arrival to production ready, so that they can measure that in their CCC cycle time reports. Now, because the start date and the end date are the same, if you were to measure that in a cycle time report, it would show 0, right? Because it was started immediately. So if you wanted to, and this is kind of an advanced move, but I want to make sure everybody sees this, you can actually change the start date by removing the pre-production phase, okay? Changing the start date to the date it actually got put into production. Make sure that you check the repair started box. Okay, like I said, this is advanced, but now when a shop views their cycle time report, they can begin to measure how long it's taking them from vehicle in to repair start. So I just wanted to make sure that I showed you guys how to do this. This is something that once we get some of the other stuff perfected and everybody's firing on all cylinders and the other stuff, then we can probably move to this level. But I wanted to make sure that I showed everybody how to do that. So this is kind of a production manager thing that I like to point out when I'm doing training on the production schedule dashboard, and that is this. There's two very important columns here: parts percentage and labor percentage. If I see any vehicles in paint or after that do not have a green check mark right here indicating that we have 100% of the parts, I'm going to start asking some questions. Right, so this is a way to get the team and hold them accountable for timely invoicing of the parts, because I don't want to see anything in paint or after that doesn't have parts. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I didn't follow exactly what you said. We had a little computer glitch. So say that one more time about the parts.
No problem. So as a way to hold each other accountable and to help manage the shop flow, you want to make sure that you're getting your parts invoiced in a timely fashion. And anytime that there's a vehicle on your production schedule dashboard that's in paint or after, you want to make sure that this, where you see this little 0 right here, this means that you have 0% of the parts on hand. You want to see a green check mark instead, indicating that you've got 100% of the parts. So whenever you see anything but a green check mark, it's the responsibility of management to start asking questions. Why is this car in paint already and we don't have enough parts to put it back together? Okay, so there could be a simple explanation. It could be that, well, one of those parts is actually not a part. Maybe it's a sublet operation. So this is the final little trick I want to show you guys. In those situations, I like to go down here and put a comment. Windshield or alignment or whatever, right? So you've got a comment in there. What is it that's keeping us from achieving a green check mark? I like to have sublet operations put in this little comment box. A lot of people don't even know this box even exists, and it's pretty cool, especially for those that like to use the production schedule dashboard as a report, because it'll show up on your report that this vehicle needs an alignment. So when you're having your morning meetings, it's right there where everybody can see it. So just another little tip I wanted to show everybody. So this kind of concludes the what I wanted to show you guys on the basic production schedule dashboard repair plan management in CCC, but I wanted to check back in with you guys and see if you had any questions before we finish.
Are you suggesting that back when we were talking about the little question mark at the end, suggest we leave that question mark until we officially know that there's a timeout date?
That is my recommendation primarily for users of Update Plus. They're using the automated features that update a customer. So in your particular case, if you're not using Update Plus, it doesn't really matter. Okay? And
all right, good.
Any other questions, guys?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for attending our little webinar today.